I want to talk about democratic socialism. We used to say people were socialists. Bernie Sanders was a socialist. But now they're all democratic socialists. And don't be fooled. I mean, this is just pure bullshit. Democrat and socialism does not go together. And, there's plenty of examples of this. What's North Korea's actual name? It's the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea. They're democratic socialists. Would you want to live in North Korea? Remember the GDR, East Germany, the communist East Germany? It was the German Democratic Republic. Socialists and communists often slip the word Democrat into the titles of their countries or into their constitutions. But that doesn't make them Democrat, because the two ideals of socialism and democracy don't go together. Democracy, what's democracy about? It's the people making decisions, individual people making decisions about this, that, or the other thing. Socialism is about the state making the decisions for you. The state deciding whether you can use plastic straws or whether you can order a big Coke. The state deciding how much you should be paid or where you should be working or whether or not you can go to college. That's socialism. Socialism, the fundamental pillar of socialism involves the means of production. That's what sets it apart from capitalism. The means of production are the things that, the car factories, the mines, agricultural property, land, the things that produce all the other things in society. Under capitalism, these things are, for the most part, owned by people, either individual people or people acting collectively in forms of corporations or larger families or whatever. Under socialism, the state owns these things and controls them. So in a capitalist society, a coal mine would be owned by a coal mining company. In a socialist society, it would be owned by the state. That's the difference between the means of production, because in the socialist theory is that if capitalists, private people, own the means of production, they'll exploit the workers for profit. Whereas if the state owns something, they won't. And of course, anybody familiar with the history of the Soviet Union or any number of other places on the planet know that the idea that the state would exploit its workers is it happened all the time. In many cases, I mean, the countries in the world who have had the worst records on environmental stuff are the communist states. I mean, they didn't give a shit about anything. Chernobyl, or the cleanup that we were engaged in East Europe after the Soviets pulled out. So this is the critical point here. Who controls the means of production? And let me explain why democratic socialism doesn't mean anything like they claim it means. Now look, there are zillions of examples I could give, but I'm just going to give you one. I hope it's easily understood. It's one I use in class when students ask us questions related to this. Free press. The idea of a free press is enshrined in our First Amendment. We all, I think, would like to see a free press. We don't want people telling the press what to do from Washington. Would you want the Trump administration to control all the newspapers in this country? I'm sure you would. I don't. I voted for Trump, but that doesn't mean I think he should take over all the newspapers in the country. It's good to have a free press. It's a check on things. It's a good development. Now, I would argue that the press today isn't acting very free. They're acting free, but they're acting, they're telling them a lot of fake news. But setting that aside, it's still good to have a free press in principle. And it's enshrined in our Constitution. In the first of our amendments, it shows you how it's right up there with, free speech and freedom of religion, the freedom of assembly. What do you need to have a free press? Now, freedom of the press is a political right. A newspaper or a television network, NBC or the Washington Post or the New York Times or Breitbart or the New Republic or National Review can say what they pretty much want. That's a political right. But what does that political right rest on? And this is true of the development of capitalist society. Capitalist society first developed sets foundations of economic rights. And then on that foundation of economic rights, they expanded that to include political rights. Our political rights rest on a foundation of economic rights. And that's clear when you look at the press. You can't have the political right of freedom of the press rest on an economic right, the right of individuals to own the press in a capitalist society. If you take away that right, which is basically what socialists want to do, whether they want to come out and say it or not, but if you think the means of production should be owned by the state, then newspapers should be owned by the state. Media organizations, whether it's MSNBC, CNN, or Fox, should be owned and controlled by the state. Once you do that, once you destroy the economic right, the political right is lost. You can't have a free press. You know, if the Trump administration, the US government controlled the New York Times, and Trump is the president, and the New York Times says something Trump doesn't like, they're shut down. Or the people who said it end up in a camp somewhere. You know, that's what would happen in Nazi Germany or Stalinist Russia. So the political freedom of the press rests on an economic freedom. And what the socialist is telling you when he says, I am a socialist, or she says, I am a socialist, or Z says, I am a socialist, they're telling you they want to destroy that economic right. And then they throw Democrat in front of their name, making you think that even when they destroy that, they're not going to destroy freedom of the press, but they are. And they'll destroy all other sets of rights. All our political rights rest on a set of economic rights, of property rights, of all kinds of other rights, because that's the way capitalism developed. And what the socialists want to do is go in and remove those economic rights. But they like to tell you that this won't affect your political rights. You see, we're democratic socialists. Well, so is Kim Jong-un in North Korea. He's a democratic socialist. So are the leaders of the German Democratic Republic. Stalin would have claimed he was a democratic socialist. So don't be fooled, because what they're telling you, what they want you to accept is to disbelieve what they're telling you. They're telling you we want to do these things because we're socialists, but they're also telling you, but don't worry about it because we won't do these other things. And they will. They always do. It's in their nature. It's what they want, because they believe the means of production should be controlled by the state, not by individuals, not by people. And when they do that, they're going to destroy freedom of the press, and they'll destroy any number of other freedoms. So don't be fooled. I mean, this is how they operate. They fool people. You know, when the Bolshevik Revolution in October 1917, they promised the people three things: peace, bread, and land. And they delivered. They took the land from the rich, and they distributed it among the peasants. And the peasants were happy, and the peasants were productive. And after World War I, agricultural production started to resume and pick up again. But what happened? The people had economic rights. They had land, but they didn't like the way the Soviet government was handling pricing and supply. And they wanted a greater input, a voice, if you will, into that. So what did they do? They petitioned, they protested, and eventually they started holding back their crops to put pressure on the government. How did the Bolsheviks respond? They went in, they confiscated all the land, nationalized it, and then spread it out in terms of collective and state farms. They took the land back from the people. They had promised the people the land in 1917, and then in the early 20s they reneged on that promise and they took the land back. And that's how they operate. They'll promise you one thing, But when it comes to their power, when it comes to either yielding to you or getting to fully use their power of the state, you're screwed. You're going to be screwed. Mark my words. Hopefully we don't go that way.